All right, everybody, welcome to another Mortgage Coach Trust Engine interview. Super fired up. My name is Dave Savage. I am the Chief Innovation Officer here, and I'm sitting down with Todd Ballenger. Todd, how you have so many cool things that you're doing in the world of financial literacy and in the world of helping loan officers win in this market. How should I position you?
Let's just say, I'll respond to just about anything. I get called a lot of things, but call me, just a mortgage professor, which you've called in the past. Is pretty good because I love studying the mortgage industry, talking about it, continuing to learn and share what I've learned.
All right, guys. So it is the mortgage professor, and he's got an incredible blog, training platform. Helps turn loan officers into mortgage advisors and mortgage coaches. I'm a big fan of Todd because he's just making loan officers more valuable to consumers, more valuable to realtors, more valuable to financial planners. So Todd, I know you're passionate about this topic. Ric Edelman is someone I've interviewed multiple times. I've read his books. There's a lot of great things that he says in there, and there's a lot of value. But I also know that you read a recent report he had, and you just want to bring some education to the mortgage coach community around it. So why don't you frame it, and then why don't you walk through your breakdown?
That'd be great. Yes, his Truth About Money is probably the book that I'll give college students when they say, I want to learn about money. What should I read? That's the first book I'll give them because it does such a great job.
Truth About Money.
Yeah, it's fantastic. It's one of the most thorough it's almost like a little catalog or anthem to money. But he does such a great job of breaking down all the key concepts and ideas. So again, I'm a big fan. But I've noticed I've had people ask me about, it was originally 10 reasons, and then he updated it on his website maybe a year or so ago, the 11 reasons to carry a big, long mortgage. And people talk about this article all the time. And I've heard a lot of people say they share it with their clients. I've heard people talking about it and referencing it when they're saying things that it's just not right. It's not accurate. And so I took the time to read the article, break it down. And I put together basically a 35-page ebook. You can read it in a half hour. It's just like reading the article. But what I did is I deconstruct the original article and take the really powerful concepts that are there and say where I really agree with them and why, so that loan officers can maybe learn a little bit more depth on why some of these concepts are so important to understand. But simultaneously, I'm kind of breaking down the parts that I disagree with because I have a couple of CLAs in our group that are getting paid big money right now to be court testifiers and expert witnesses against banks and lenders that have said things that were inappropriate. You don't want to learn about some of this stuff in a courthouse, right? You want to learn about it up front and make sure you're not putting videos and making a statement that's just not true for a consumer that they're using that information to maybe make a decision. It could be nothing to do with you. The house value could go down, but they'll look for reasons to blame somebody. And I like just making sure people are clear. Why is some of this stuff what it is? So Dave's going to give you a link afterwards. You can download this for free and read through it. And again, it's just the original article. And let's talk about, some of the reasons what he says are great reasons to carry a mortgage. And let's talk about whether they're accurate or not. I mean, you know a lot of this stuff intuitively, Dave. You ready to roll? I'm just going to run through.
Yeah, let's roll. The only thing I would say before Todd starts rolling through this is, guys, this will make you a better mortgage advisor when it comes to getting business from CPAs, financial planners, realtors. It will make you more referable. And also what he's going to share will make you an expert. So you can just show up a lot better. So, really pay attention to this. This is available on our YouTube channel. And it is something that I think every mortgage advisor should go through this training that Todd's going to deliver over the next 20-ish minutes. So let's roll.
All right, awesome. And people are saying, hey, I'm giving Ric's article to financial advisors, CPAs, just as you were saying, Dave. And I'm like, okay, we'll give them this one. You'll give them something that's much more in depth that will get them thinking and agreeing and disagreeing with some of these points, which is really all you want to do is get people talking, especially if you're building a new relationship. So let's look at reason number one. Your mortgage doesn't affect your home's value. Totally agree. And this is something that law officers need to understand and understand why. And he uses an example of two brothers. But when you get a mortgage, whether you have a $400,000 house with no mortgage, meaning you pay cash for it, or a $400,000 house with a $400,000 mortgage, as we cover in this example, it doesn't affect your appreciation. So people, really, consumers, misunderstand this key point that he's making there, and that is that whether there's a mortgage or not does not affect the wealth creation tool that is real estate. It affects something else, which is where they get confused. That's cash flow, right? Because a big mortgage is going to have a bigger payment than no mortgage, but that's a different discussion that we'll have later. So it's very important to understand that the mortgage doesn't affect wealth creation from a standpoint of how appreciation works. Now, the other thing, though, that he says here is that equity in the house is like having money under your mattress. So you wouldn't stash $400,000 in your mattress. Well, a mattress example assumes that money that's in the house earns 0%. And that's not true, right? We know that if you have money in the house, it's offsetting interest that you would have paid otherwise. And we go through an example on that here, but this is my first point that I want to disagree with, is when you say that equity in the house is dead money, it's like having money in a mattress. That's a misunderstanding of how money works. And he knows better. And I know this is an extreme example, obviously, but maybe it was someone writing this article for him, didn't get this clear. If you put $400,000 down on a house that you're buying for $400,000, right? You don't have to pay that 6% interest on that over 30 years. You can't say that's like the same as putting $400,000 in a mattress, because you're not saving, you're not earning anything, because money saved is money earned. All right, so that's my first point. I totally agree with what he's saying around appreciation. Totally disagree with the idea or concept that money in the house is dead money, because it is doing something for you. It is offsetting real interest. All right. Reason two, Rick says, and again, stop Dave with any questions. I'm just going to roll through this. A mortgage won't stop you from building equity in the house. All right. So this one's kind of confusing. Again, it's subtle, and I understand what he's saying, but think about, again, we'll use extreme examples. If I am buying a $400,000 house and I pay cash, I have put $400,000 in the house immediately. If I buy a $400,000 house and borrow $400,000, the other extreme, I have no equity in the house. But the only way you build equity in a house is through appreciation. This is one of the key concepts in my book, Borrow Smart, Repay Smart, that loan officers who've been in this industry for 20 years read it and go, oh my gosh, I never quite understood this the way you explained it. If I have a house and it appreciates, I create wealth. If you buy a stock and the stock goes up in value, you create wealth. If it goes down in value, you lose wealth. Same with real estate. The equity that's built in the house is only new wealth if it's through appreciation. If you repay your mortgage debt, you are not building equity the way when people talk about equity, there's two ways they talk about it. There's equity in the house and there's wealth. So if you say by paying the mortgage off, I'm building equity in the house, then yes, I would agree with that. But the way that Rick's talking about here, he's talking about it from a standpoint of wealth. And you do not create wealth when you transfer money from your checking account to your mortgage each month. That's already your money. It's already your equity. It's already your wealth on your balance sheet. You are choosing to reposition that equity from your checking account into a mortgage. In doing that, yes, you're building equity in the house, but you're not building wealth. And again, that can be one of those things you're like, what is he talking about? It's really simple. Go through the examples here and look at them like thought experiments. We have little graphs and charts that help to understand this, but it's an important thing to understand, because what I hear is loan officers are saying, hey, put as little down as possible. There's a reason for that. And then they're saying you'll create a lot more wealth by building equity. That's true if the house appreciates. But if you think that putting $100,000 down on the house is increasing your wealth, ask yourself, where did the $100,000 come from? If it was in a checking account, a savings account, an investment account, It's not creating new wealth. It's already your wealth. You're just relocating it. That's why I say that location is about two things: the house, where it's located, and how you choose to repay the house. How do you borrow and how do you repay over time? Because it's silly to think you're creating wealth for yourself or your clients when you're not. So you want to understand how wealth actually works. And it's really simple once you understand. It's all tied to appreciation. The decision to pay more into a house, to pay it off faster, all of these things have to do with what's the best way to pay off the house over time. Should you make larger down payments? Should you do that? And that's a different discussion that we talk about later. So I agree with what he's saying about some of this stuff. You know, if the house goes up by 3% a year in appreciation, yes, you're worth $241,000 more, right, over time. But if you bought a $400,000 house and it's worth $541,000, you're not worth $500,000 more. You're worth $141,000. The difference between the house that the amount you paid for the house and the future value of that house, that's the new wealth. So Rick says mortgage is cheap money. I totally agree. And we use an example from my book here. If you look historically, mortgage debt is the cheapest debt you can get, except for in some cases, student loan debt, which can be really, really inexpensive. And I've got this simple savings calculator. It's a very powerful calculator, and I use it in many of the examples in this paper. You can download it for free. It's Excel. You can plug these numbers in as you're going through this. And if you really want to learn it, take the time to plug the numbers from my examples into the simple savings calculator. You can also do them. I do a TCA at the end. You can use the TCA to model this as well. Model these concepts. Take the time to learn them so that you're not just repeating something that you've heard, which is really a memory exercise. It's not really understanding. And as Dave knows, I'm really all about the understanding, right? So that you get why this stuff works the way it works. So one of the things that we talk about here, and this is something that I've explained to loan officers over the years, rate and return are the exact same thing from two different perspectives. If I have a $100,000 loan, I'm concerned about the rate. Why? Because that's interest I pay. Well, someone loaned me $100,000, and guess what? That thing you're calling a rate is their return on that $100,000 loan. If you invest $100,000, you're what? You're curious about your return on that. How much am I making? And someone else is worried about the return. I mean, the rate, because that's what they're paying, dividend or whatever, to borrow that money. So whenever you're borrowing or lending, understand rate and return are the same thing, but there's always two perspectives: someone who's earning the interest and someone who's paying the interest. So if you just get that concept down, you'll start to realize, hey, if I borrow at 5% on a mortgage and I earn 5% on my investments, then my decision is really a neutral decision. It's really more about liquidity. Where do I want to keep that money over time? But mortgage money, I totally agree with Rick. Mortgage money is cheap. And I've got a table here showing historically as far back as I could go from the book. You can click on that and pop it up and see all of those returns over time. Now, so far, I mean, again, I agree with Rick, money's cheap. I agree with Rick, the house is an incredible investment. You're going to spend money to live somewhere indoors, but the way you create wealth in the house is through appreciation. And this is one of the biggest sort of misunderstandings here. And I don't know if it's just that they haven't taken the time to update, but it's really important because there's a lot of confusion around mortgage interest and tax deductibility. You know, we created the concept of EPR, effective percentage rate. And our students now know that EPR to us is the nominal rate. We no longer use tax deductibility. And this whole article is talking about, throughout all of the examples, all of the tax deductible benefits. And you can't say that anymore. So one of the arguments that I would make is that currently, based on the IRS Tax Foundation, only 13.7% of US citizens itemize, right? So if you're sitting down with 100 clients, 13 of them are itemizing, 87 are not, 86% are not itemizing, which means they're getting the standard deduction, which means they're getting the same deduction whether they rent, have a mortgage, or whatever. So if you're telling clients the mortgage is a great opportunity to save money on your taxes, then you have to be able to back that up. And right now, I don't think most of us can. We model this in our course, and we go through multiple mortgage balances at different levels. And really, you get phased out at a certain level, but your mortgage needs to be upwards of $700,000-800,000 before the interest that you're paying is even exceeding the itemized deduction amount that you would typically get. And if you really want to do that and you want to talk about tax deduction, my recommendation is you do that with a CPA partner who likes to look at this stuff and analyze it for his clients or her clients and say, yeah, this is a great deduction for you. But for most Americans, unless the mortgage is north of $1 million or they're making $300,000, $400,000 a year in this upper brackets, they're only still going to see a small percentage, and then that's capped at $750 on a lot of this debt. So I recommend in this day and age, you do not talk about mortgage tax deductibility, because if you're doing that with all your clients, you're really addressing a small amount in California and certain markets, New York, where there might be a small window. Like we did one model where unless, if they have an old mortgage of 3% at 826, that's the point where there'd be $1 of benefits above that, right? So again, you're really addressing a small point of the market. And the other thing that Rick talks about here is in his examples, he talks about capital gains as the tax. Well, capital gains, again, there's state and federal. Capital gains is 15% at the federal level, but you have to pay state too. And you have to hold this for more than 12 months, so you're paying ordinary income. So again, it's a fair example. So some of these I'll say I partially agree or disagree with what he's saying. But again, I'm sure he knows this. I know he knows this. This guy's a billionaire. But be aware, be careful if you're sharing concepts and ideas like this, that you understand the basics. So what we teach in the course is what is long-term capital gains versus ordinary income, and why do you need to know that as a mortgage professional? And we go through again.
Real quick, Todd, I want to jump in. So two things. So Susan just asked, where can we get the ebook again? Would you just, and anyone listening to this, if you're watching this in YouTube, we'll put a link down below in show notes. But Todd, real quick, if you could just describe that again for Susan.
Yeah, so two possibilities. One, Dave, I've got the link to you that you can paste in at the end, and they can download it as a PDF. They can also, email me and just tell me they want it. I'll email it back to you at kendalltodd@gmail.com. It's also on the blog. I've posted it up on my blog as a post with a link to download it there.
Okay, I see it right here. So I will put this in YouTube right now, although the link you gave me is not working.
Not?
Hang on. Well, anyways, I'll figure this out.
I'll resend you the PDF after we're done too, if that's okay.
Okay, and then also one last thing before you keep going and net this out. Remember, guys, we're a community. So like of all the things that you're learning, what's the big one that you think is going to help you the most? I'd love to know of all the things you've learned from this at the very end, what's the number one thing that you're going to add to your conversation that you're going to master? Todd's sharing a lot of ideas, but what's the one that's most important? I would just love to know what that is. Hey, Todd, do you mind if I put this into a Google Doc? I think it might just be easier for people to.
Absolutely.
And do you mind if I also put it in our Facebook group so it's a deliverable there?
Absolutely.
Okay, good. So guys, this place will be 10 ways to Sunday all over the place in just a few minutes. Anyways, keep it rocking, bro.
All right, bud. Thanks, man. So mortgage payments get easier over time. Totally agree, right? When you take out a mortgage payment, the beauty of a mortgage payment is it's basically an inflation benefit to you, because over time you've locked in your costs now, and 30 years from now, your money is going to appreciate, your house is going to appreciate, but guess what? You're still making that same mortgage payment in today's dollars, and you're locking that in. A renter doesn't have that. Their payments go up over time because rent is also indexed to inflation. So it's going the other direction. So this is one of the most coolest things. I've got a whole paper you can link to from this one called Borrowing and Inflation. And there's another spreadsheet you can put in, and they'll show you how the payment itself is devalued over time based on inflation, and why the mortgage gets so much cheaper and feels so much easier to pay. So I really love this particular reason. It's something a lot of consumers don't understand. They understand that it feels easier, but they don't understand why. And we explain that in this little ebook. It's like a 3-page ebook called Borrowing and Inflation. Mortgages allow you to sell without selling. Kind of a weird term, but you know what he's trying to say here, right? Is if you have a house, if you have stock and you want to live in the stock, you can't do that. If you want to use the equity, you can borrow against it. Well, a house, you still get to live in the house, even though you don't sell it, you can borrow against it and access that wealth. So this is a really powerful reason to have a mortgage. You can access wealth in the house, keep living in it, and you can do that without selling the house. And I've got a couple of examples here, but there's one example that I kind of partially agree with, and that is he used an example of like if you lose your job or you need money, you can then what? Use wealth in the house without selling it. Well, that's actually not true because now you lose the ability to borrow. So it's very important that you set up HELOCs and things in advance of true needs because the house is your own, it's your own bank, right? If you got a $400,000 house with a $200,000 mortgage, you have $200,000 equity that you can borrow against, but only if you qualify. And unfortunately, foreclosures, divorce, disability, job loss, depreciation, lawsuit, this is from the book as well. This is the top 6 reasons that people need wealth from the house. And guess what? Tell me in any of those situations where you could borrow money from the house easily. And the answer is you can't. So you want to have an equity line of credit in advance as part of your liability management and planning for your client. So a couple more here, we'll wrap up. And again, just take the time and we can always come back and answer questions. But 8 and 9 mortgages can allow you to invest more money and invest it more quickly. Totally agree. People that are trying to decide, should I pay cash for a house or not? Or should I put down 50% or not? They really have the same question. They just don't know what it is. And the question is, should I prepay or should I invest? And that question is, what is the highest and best use of my money over 30 or 40 years? That's a long time. There's a lot of compounding and doubles that can happen there. So as a rule of thumb, we say put as minimum down as you can to accomplish your goal of controlling the asset, in this case, the house, which uses more leverage, which in this case is the mortgage. And in most cases, that's going to be the best situation for most people. And there's one other example in here where we go through, and this is using, again, that spreadsheet that you can download in the ebook, where we go through and model 2 different scenarios. We actually model his example of the 2 different people, Nick and Sam, and show the financial difference at the end of 30 years, 2.6 million versus 1.5 million. You'll hear me say this at the end, but I'll say this right now. This is why liability management is huge. If you are trying to help a client save more money for the future, and Dave, they're saving $200 a month. If you can get them to save 100% more, they're saving $400 a month. That's really cool. But if someone's buying a $300,000 house, and you can help them make a decision that by making a decision, in this case, to put less money down, over 30 years, they have 1.1 million in more wealth. You just save them 3 times the value of the house by helping them make a mortgage liability management decision. So when you understand some of these simple concepts and compounding and time value of money, you start to realize how to present this advice in a way that's incredibly valuable to your consumer. So 2 more things. This W-4 example that he gives in here, there was an old saying, and we used to use this a lot. You're buying a new house, just increase your W-4 withholdings. That gives you more money right now that you can use to pay for a new house. The assumption was once you had the house and you had all those mortgage interest deductions, you could use that deduction to offset that additional money that you took out from your income. But that's not true anymore, right? Because the itemized deduction is the same whether you rent or own or whatever for most people. So you can use the W-4 as a strategy to increase the W-4 to take more money home each month, but it's not going to get offset by your mortgage interest deduction at the end. So I kind of disagree with that. But otherwise, I agree with most of these things. This one about mortgages give you greater liquidity and flexibility. Totally agree. It's one of the most misunderstood reasons of mortgages. Most people think about mortgages and the payment, but it provides liquidity and flexibility. Once the money's in the house, you can only take it out by selling the house or borrowing, right? And And that's a good thing, but that's either a heavy transaction cost or you've got to qualify and do a mortgage. Again, another big transaction cost. Putting less in gives you more flexibility. The location of your money is critical, just as it is with your house. And if you're going to pay the house off, I used to tell people, pay it off by writing a check for the full amount. Don't pay it off in little pieces, because all you're doing is transferring your risk from the bank to you. Because the more you pay down on a house, the more security the bank has, the less security you have. You want that flexibility of controlling that wealth. And last one, come down to the big one here at the end around, this is where I do a TCA that you can kind of watch. You can click on this and actually watch this, is you'll never get rid of your monthly payment. Now, this is a new reason that he added. And this is true, but I also would say I kind of partially agree with it. And what he's saying there is, even if you pay off the house in full, you still have a property payment and homeowners insurance payments and stuff like that. And that's true, but come on. I mean, you know, if I'm paying $3,000 for my mortgage and $1,000 for taxes and insurance, and then I only have to pay $1,000 for taxes and insurance, I've reduced my monthly payment by 75%. So the real question is yes, you'll always have a payment, but that payment can come from other places. So we go through again and show an example where, you know, this sounds crazy, but I have a lot of friends that are in the 90s right now, you know, grandparents, friends of my parents and stuff. So if you're thinking about making a decision when you retire at age 60 or 65, you could still live for 30 more years. You could live to 95. So imagine you don't even learn about mortgage planning and liability management till you retire. And you now have a choice. You've got $2 million in savings, and you're trying to decide whether to take that money from your savings and pay off your mortgage payment so you don't have a payment in retirement, or leave it in your investment account and let the investment pay your mortgage payment over 30 years. You can say, well, that's an extreme example, but it's an extreme difference. In one case, there's a $19 million estate at age 95. In another, there's an $11 million estate. Why? Because of the time value of money and the fact that you're already at $2 million at age 65. By the time you're 95, compounding and doubling, you're going to have what, 2 million, 4 million, 8 million, 16 million. Those doubles get bigger and bigger. And that's why we say everything compounds just like interest. Mistakes compound, wealth compounds, your knowledge compounds. It compounds just like interest. If you'll learn one concept or two concepts from this article and then apply it to something you're doing with your clients, you'll get more confident, and you can really ask yourself, do you want to be Sam or Nick, as Rick does in this article.
So stop sharing real quick. So guys, we're going to put the links to this down below. Anytime you're bringing financial literacy to folks, and you're using these financial principles, you're using MortgageCoach as a teaching tool. That last one was, by far my favorite, just because Todd created a TCA, and I thought that was pretty cool. I do want to call out a few things that are hot off the press in MortgageCoach land. So one, and it's pinned towards the top, Dan Keller did a really cool job of, well, actually, this one is Denise Donahue. So let's do Denise first. She did a really cool job of using MortgageCoach in a little financial literacy lesson. So, just
4 different interest rate options, one with an interest rate as low as 6.625 or as high as 7.375. And
I'm not going to go through the whole thing with you guys right now, but just let's put it this way. She made a great case that mortgage strategy beats price, when you're looking at rates. So she did a really nice job of that. Scott Nicholson did a pretty cool thing here on the new Fed news. So check this out, guys. Dan Keller just did a Instagram, and he did this on Instagram and Facebook, where he's talking about the new FHA.
Save money. We got some really great news today from HUD.
And then within that FHA news, he's like, what does this mean to a consumer? Like, he's breaking down the numbers. He's using the total cost analysis on a current news event. So I hope that what you guys do from content like this, what Todd just taught you is how to analyze the data, how to make the case for a mortgage, how to do it in a way that's as accurate as possible. He thought there were a few things that could use some color on it. Todd, any last advice you want to give to the mortgage coach community before we wrap up this session?
Yeah, just don't look at this as, oh, this is too complicated, this is too hard. I mean, that's like a doctor saying, I'm not going to really learn about this part of the body. It's just, I'm gonna focus here. Take the time, learn one concept a week, one idea a week, and apply it, and do another one and another one. And eventually, as I like to say, people focus so much on growing their business. And if you grow yourself, your business is constantly trying to keep up, right? So keep growing yourself personally, keep learning and growing. And as you do that, the business is constantly struggling to say, how do I keep growing? Because this guy knows so much stuff. He has so many abilities. If you're focusing on growing your business and you're sitting there not learning anything new and applying it and just focusing on how do I get my business to grow, I feel like you're really missing out on opportunity.
Yeah, great opportunity for growth. Todd, as always, really appreciate you, brother.
Thanks, man.
The article he's talking about will be a download in our Facebook group. There'll be a link down below, whether you're watching this in YouTube. I've already put a link in our Facebook group. And then, as Todd told you, you can also get it at borrowsmart.com, and you can email Todd, and we'll put all that down below. Brother, take care.
Thanks, man.
I appreciate you.